The right honourable gentleman also managed to, in a moment or two, the right honourable gentleman also managed to criticise us when we cut interest rates. Mind you, just 3 days earlier, he was urging us to do just that. But then he's always saying, cut interest rates. He did it when inflationary pressures were rising. He's like a stopped clock. It's bound to tell the right time eventually. But it's completely useless unless there's someone else around who actually knows the time of day. But the fact is that the countries which were most efficient, the countries which had not got over manning, the countries whose governments had faced realistically the economic problems before 1979, of course they ride the world recessions better. They are Germany, they are France, they are Japan. They are all the countries which followed the very policies which the right honourable gentleman's government rejected, and which we are now trying to follow today. That is why they oppose our plans for giving your doctors and nurses, your teachers and parents more say, more responsibility, more power to decide near the point at which the decision has to be taken. That's why they oppose our plans for doing that in hospitals and in schools. They would rather have it decided by a bureaucratic level above. That is the essence of their creed. Government control over the lives of the people, and it runs through all of their policies. That's why they love that socialist Delors socialist charter. When will they learn you cannot build Jerusalem in Brussels? The right honourable gentleman referred to the TUC policy document and to his own policies. They seem to amount to spend more, tax less, and meet the difference by printing and call it reflation. I must say to him that if anything like those proposals were adopted, the pound would plunge and inflation and interest rates would rocket. And it would be no use pretending that reimposing exchange controls would help, because look at 1976, there were exchange controls then, yet the pound plunged. And if the pound plunges with consequent increases in interest rates and inflationary expectations, bang will go all our hopes for more jobs. And that would be the effect of the right honourable gentleman's policies. Voted to emasculate defence, to bump up public spending, to ditch our electoral system and to deselect moderate MPs. The audience applauded like mad. Only Dennis Skinner remained glued to his seat. The theatre of the absurd was clearly not for him. Well, Mr. President, they can produce all the assurances in the world. They can say that they never read their own manifestos or understood their own speeches. But there's one thing they can't do. They can't tell the nation why it should trust a party whose only claim to office is that it has ditched its principles, disguised its policies, and denied its past. And when a party does that, how could anyone trust its promises for the future? What he argued for was a policy of massive reflation. I'm glad there is no doubt about what he's arguing for. A policy of massive reflation. And those who support him do so on the basis that there's a grave shortage of demand. In other words, they claim that there's a shortage of money in the economy. They argue that, as in the 1930s, the right way forward is to increase demand by a policy of reflation. But, Mr. Speaker, that analysis contains a simple and fundamental fallacy. There just isn't a shortage of demand at the present time. Well, look, for example, at the market for cars. Demand this year exists for 1.4 million cars. But fewer than 700,000 of those cars will be supplied by British workers. That's not a failure of the government to create demand. It's a failure of competitiveness in the factory to supply the goods. Mr. President, courage is not making a speech in Bournemouth long after the event. Courage is what you show in the heat of the battle, not at the post-mortem. The opposition will no doubt mount a chorus of complaint. In spite of the fact that a moment ago they were boasting that they were able to cut them by 6% in 1 year under the aegis of the IMF. But what are the alternative policies? Are the opposition suggesting that we put up income tax? They did that in 1974 and 1975. More and more people were brought into tax, and as a result, incentive and enterprise were destroyed. And then our opponents, having lost the political argument, try another tack. They try to convey the impression that we don't care. So let's take a close look at those who make this charge. They're the ones who supported and maintained Mr. Scargill's coal strike for a whole year, hoping to deprive industry, homes and pensioners of power, heat and light. They're the ones who supported the strike in the health service, which lengthened the waiting time for operations just when we were getting it down. They're the ones who supported the teachers' dispute, which disrupted our children's education. And they are those Labour councillors who constantly accuse the police of provocation when they deal with violent crime and drugs in the worst areas of our inner cities. Mr. President, we're not going to take any lessons in caring from people with that sort of record.